If you grew up in the 80s and 90s, then you're familiar with John Hughes. 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Uncle Buck, Home Alone. He was the mastermind behind a lot of great films. There is one movie, however, I feel like that gets overlooked and doesn't get talked about enough, and that's the 1985 movie Weird Science. This movie holds a special place in my heart, as the first time I ever watched it was when I was a teenager and had my own trials and tribulations, as Gary Wallace would say. It was relatable to me at the time, as I saw myself in Gary and Wyatt, and after rewatching it recently, it also made me think that it had a lot more influence on more contemporary shows, such as Cobra Kai. That being said, with the film nearly being 40 years old, how does it stack today? This is why Weird Science is excellent. Let's talk about the themes of the film, how it holds up today, sequel possibilities, and more. For those of you who have never seen the film before, I'll give a brief rundown. If you have seen the movie, feel free to skip to the next section of the video. Gary Wallace and Wyatt Donnelly are two nerds who are often bullied and are dissatisfied with their social life. While spending the weekend at Wyatt's, Gary gets the idea to create a woman after watching Frankenstein. With the use of Wyatt's computer, hacking into the government's power, and a Barbie doll, the two manage to create Lisa, the girl of their dreams. What soon follows afterward is a roller coaster of events. Visiting a dive bar, running into their bullies at the mall, Lisa confronting Gary's parents, and a wild house party. The party alone is on a totally different level of crazy, attracting not only the student body, but the unwanted attention of a mutant biker gang, though not before Gary and Wyatt attempt to recreate another Lisa to appease the bullies in exchange for a shot at their crushes, and Wyatt's grandparents nearly crashing the party. Wyatt and Gary find their inner confidence by rescuing their crushes, Deb and Hilly, after confronting the Mad Max-like gang, and on Sunday, deal with both the aftermath of the party and Wyatt's older brother Chet, who had previously antagonized Wyatt throughout the film. Lisa handles Chet, and the boys realize they are in love and decide to tell Lisa. Proud of the boys for having grown up and finding their inner strength, Lisa decides it's time to leave, though not before showing up the following school day at the gym as the new teacher. Let's first talk about why the film was great. For those of you who are no strangers to my channel, it's clear that I'm a fan of underdog stories since I've covered both the Karate Kid and Rocky franchises in depth. Despite their awkward qualities and methods of wanting to achieve popularity, Gary and Wyatt come across as charming and you want them to come out on top, something I'll cover more in depth in the themes section of the video. The humor is also what makes this film great and is how the film executes the story so well. The funny parts of the film range from quirky to simple and are reminiscent of other Hughes films such as The Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Looking at both Gary and Wyatt's reactions to different situations is one of the highlights of the film for me, and it's a shame we didn't see more movies with Anthony Michael Hall and Elon Mitchell Smith, as they make a great duo. As I mentioned before, the film is relatable to anyone who may have been considered a social outcast at some point. Sure, I don't think anyone was going around and becoming a virtual Dr. Frankenstein, but sometimes there's always that desire to fit in. It's not until Gary and Wyatt realize that they need to be happy with who they are that they realize that popularity doesn't matter. Let's not forget about the performance of the actors involved. It's clear that Hall carries the film as the more outspoken and smart aleck of the duo, though Elon rounds it off nicely by being more grounded and cautious. Bill Paxton, rest in peace, does an amazing job as Chet, and he easily embodies that character you love to hate energy so well. Honorable mention goes to Robert Downey Jr. in one of his early performances as the bully Ian, and plays his part effortlessly. You can see some of the same energy he later brings to Tony Stark in the MCU. And of course, we can't not talk about Kelly LeBrock. This was only her second film at the time, but she killed the role of Lisa. She's cheeky, intelligent, confident, and a mentor, all in one. It's a very interesting dynamic she has with both Gary and Wyatt, but I also think that the dynamic between the three is what makes the film both excellent and unique. Lisa evolves from being their dream girl into someone who brings out the best in them, and is happy that they can finally be themselves in the end. Finally, let's talk about the soundtrack. Danny Elfman, who was still in Oingo Boingo at this time, created the perfect theme song for the film, but there are a lot of other personal favorites on both the soundtrack and featured in the film, such as The Circle and Tenderness. At AwesomeCon 2019, the three stars participated in a reunion panel and mentioned that John Hughes had a love for music, which would explain why a lot of his film's soundtracks were so memorable. He likely had a personal hand in picking out songs to fit each film. Let's also talk about some of the themes present in the film. As I mentioned before, Weird Science is an underdog story, though there's no world heavyweight champion or local tournament karate champion that Gary and Wyatt have to fight. Instead, it's all about the battle within. The two desire to be popular, having someone at their side, and want the ability to hop to any party they want to, but they lack self-confidence. It's not until Lisa later points out that people will like them for who you are, not for what you can give them. Lisa also helps the boys become more confident in themselves by putting them in increasingly uncomfortable situations, though through friendly peer pressure, visiting the dive bar to party for the first time, managing a wild house party, and of course, facing off with the mutant bikers. Now, it can be argued that the confrontation with the mutant bikers would be the final battle that Weird Science leads up to, but surprisingly, the movie doesn't stop there, as a film like this normally would. While Gary and Wyatt prove that they aren't afraid in comparison to their bullies Max and Ian is a cookie-cutter underdog story, the following scene transitions into the next theme of the movie, acceptance of oneself. This secondary theme is present throughout the film and does intertwine with the underdog story, as we can hear this in some of Lisa's phrases. If you want to be a party animal, you have to learn to live in the jungle, stop worrying, learn to relax, etc. Lisa also defends the two in their absence against Max and Ian by stating, "I think Gary and Wyatt are going to force everyone to redefine their terms." Following the confrontation with the mutant bikers and heeding Lisa's words, Gary and Wyatt truly get to know both Deb and Hilly, where the guys are seen for who they are and later on admired for who they are. Gary's statement to Deb, "I want you to like me for what I am," echoes back to what he learned from Lisa, so he can show who he truly is and be accepted for who he is. One thing to note though, that it's not just Gary and Wyatt who go through this. This is a conflict also present in both Deb and Hilly. While neither of them are social outcasts, we see different parts of the film where they face similar struggles to Gary and Wyatt. When both witness Max and Ian bully Gary and Wyatt at the mall, they are indecisive about whether to break up with him, though Deb and Hilly indicate they're tired of Max and Ian's bullying and state that they've been to all the parties. This could mean that they're tired of the superficial popularity that they possess due to dating the two boys and are looking for something more meaningful. At the party, both Deb and Hilly feel insecure with both themselves and their relationships when they notice Lisa, and even talks about how she seems charming and nearly perfect. The theme really comes into play when Gary and Deb are talking after the party. Deb asks Gary how he feels about Lisa, complimenting Lisa's appearance, and asks how she would compare to her. Gary reassures that she's the one he wants and mentions if he had to recreate Lisa all over again, he would make her in Deb's image, proving that he accepts Deb for who she is. Hilly's conversation with Wyatt is similar, as she admires Wyatt for his bravery and admits she's not proud of being with Ian, knowing that he bullied Wyatt. There is some insecurity in this conversation, as she nervously asks if Ian would kiss her. I personally think it's a nice parallel, given how insecure the guys are at the beginning and noticing the girls who seem confident, where near the end of the film the roles are reversed, and it's themes like this that make the movie great. The real question that is on everyone's mind about this film is, does it hold up today? Let's be honest. Yes, there are problematic things with this film. Obviously, the nature of Gary's harebrained scheme to create a woman out of thin air, as a rebound relationship from both his girlfriend in Canada and naming Lisa after a girl he used to like. And it also goes without saying the nature of Lisa's relationship with both Gary and Wyatt, and yeah, you already know what moments I'm talking about. There's not much else for me to say about it except, yeah, it lives up to the title weird in many ways. However, outside of all that, yeah, I would say it holds up. Like a lot of John Hughes' other films, which some of them do have their bad moments too, they also have a lot of heart. They don't make films like they used to anymore, and Weird Science is another example of this. It's a strange mix of underdog story, romance, science fiction, and comedy, and it's executed perfectly. For a time, I forgot about this movie, and it was free recently on YouTube, so I gave it another watch, and it brought back not only a lot of nostalgia, but a lot of warm feelings too. Like Earthbound, Weird Science is a core part of my teenage years and is something I'll never forget. In an era where there weren't many people that I could relate to at school, something about these types of media resonated with me and made me feel like I wasn't alone. Now, given how the film ends, could there have been a sequel? Before you say, but Strife, there was a TV series, and yeah, I watched that too back then, but it wasn't the same, nor did it have involvement from John Hughes. The movie takes place at the fictional Shermer High School, the same school in The Breakfast Club, and if we're counting the shot near the end of the film that's also used in 16 Candles, we could also say that school is also Shermer. Near the end of the film, Lisa shows up as the new gym teacher, implying that she's continuing her mission to inspire confidence in other young men, as she did with Gary and Wyatt. The beginning of the film also shows Gary and Wyatt at the same gym, so wouldn't that mean Gary and Wyatt would run into Lisa again? This seemed like the perfect setup for a sequel, so why didn't it happen? While the film made 5 times its budget back, it was still not as favored as some of Hughes' earlier films such as 16 Candles and The Breakfast Club. However, it is now regarded as a cult classic, and there's definitely a fandom out there, not to mention ideas to either remake the film or to make a sequel. According to Deadline in 2013, Universal Studios was planning a Weird Science remake with original producer Joel Silver returning and Michael Bacall writing the film. The film was set to attempt to distinguish itself from the original Weird Science by being an edgier comedy in line with 21 Jump Street and The Hangover, which were R-rated. The studio stated that the rating for this Weird Science remake was not certain at that stage of the movie's development. However, nothing has materialized since then. In 2017, Elon Mitchell Smith spoke to HollywoodLife.com regarding his idea for a sequel. "I love the idea of a sequel because I love the movie and I was happy to be a part of it. That does sound like fun, but I'm pretty busy as a college professor right now. It would be a matter of seeing whether something like that could fit into my schedule. But my favorite idea for Weird Science 2 would be in one which Wyatt and Gary are all grown up and they have daughters who find their old stuff. They get together and make Channing Tatum," he told us, as we wholeheartedly agreed with the concept. Elon then added, "I'll keep my fingers crossed for that movie to somehow be made." Of course, as we roll into 2024, nothing has come from either of these ideas, but that could also change in the future. Also, considering that John Hughes passed away in 2009, rest in peace, it's hard to imagine what that sequel would look like without him at the helm. For a brief moment, I'm going to talk about how Weird Science influenced some of today's media. Of course, we can't not talk about this film in the episode titled Weird Science in the show The Goldbergs, where Elon even makes a cameo as a science teacher wearing very similar clothes to Wyatt's. As some of you have seen in my videos, I find a way to tie things back into Cobra Kai, and I'm going to do that right now. I think I just realized as writing this that perhaps why I enjoy the character duo of Hawk and Dimitri so much is that they remind me of Gary and Wyatt. Dimitri definitely has some of the same mannerisms and smart aleck nature that Gary has, while Eli has some of the same timid nature that Wyatt has until he shows his courage later on in the movie. It also makes a lot of sense for these two, given that the two guys get with girls who are out of their popularity league as seen early on, just like Gary and Wyatt did. Of course, there's the fact that both Hawk and Dimitri have faced down their bullies many times just like Gary and Wyatt did, though instead of gaining confidence through Elisa, it was through their senseis Johnny and Daniel. I think it's really worth noting that John Hughes could have been a huge influence on the writing of Cobra Kai in many elements, and if you like the drama that's in Cobra Kai, you'd probably enjoy Weird Science and The Breakfast Club. Here are my final thoughts on the film. Weird Science, influenced by Al Feldstein's Made of the Future, is a unique film. As I've said before, it's the right blend of underdog, comedy, romance, and science fiction, and it just works. It was surprising for me to learn that it's not considered in the same league as other John Hughes teenage films, which I never considered that way. While 16 Candles was about the coming of age and The Breakfast Club talked about identity, Weird Science perfectly conveyed the acceptance of self and believing in yourself. The way I see it, Weird Science is just a different lesson than John Hughes was teaching through his movies. The 80s were just built different, and without that era, we wouldn't have great films like Karate Kid, Rocky, and Weird Science. Let me know what you think down below. What's your favorite part of the movie? If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like it, subscribe, share it with your friends, and comment, as these all help the community grow. And hey, guess what? I actually have content on my gaming channel now. I currently have some videos running on loop of playthroughs I've done, along with clips I've put up on the gaming channel now. I'm pretty close to getting this channel partnered as well, so any support is appreciated. Thanks for watching, stay beautiful, stay awesome, and we'll catch you around next time.